Today I expand my horizons. Hello and welcome to RotD Review of the Day, and today I am taking a look at the 2018 sensation from India, Bhaagamathie. Now, one of the things that I really love about doing this channel and these YouTube videos is the opportunity it presents me, the catalyst, if you will, for doing exactly what the stinger in this video said, expanding my horizons. I enjoy that. And, before I started doing this, I've never had a real aversion to subtitled movies. I love watching movies from foreign lands. As you know, if you watch these videos with any regularity, I'm a huge fan of Asian horror. That goes back a lot further than this channel. But I've definitely had more of a broad range that this channel has inspired me to achieve. And this was my first foray into a Hindi horror movie. And ultimately where I landed with Bhaagamathie is I enjoyed it. I thought it was very entertaining, and I was pretty captivated throughout the movie. Now, granted, if you're going to watch this one, be prepared. Pucker up, because this is over about 2.5 hours long. It is not a quick watch. But it was entertaining throughout, and the best way I can really describe it is if I were to try and kind of balance the positive and the negative and come up with a single sentence to describe both, is that every aspect of this movie was just a bit much. And I honestly don't have, clearly I don't have experience with Hindi horror movies. I actually don't have a whole lot of experience with any movies from India or Bollywood. I know of them, and I know of the stereotypes of, everybody dancing for, every 5 seconds in these. I will say that in Bhaagamathie there is no dancing, for what that's worth. And not that I have any aversion against dancing. I just, this is where my knowledge base is coming from, is not from personal experience, but just from stereotypes and the rumor mill about Bollywood that we tend to get here over in the States. Now, let's get into the deeper parts of this movie by getting into the categories. As always, 4 different categories, each one worth up to 25 points for a total possible score of 100 points. And the plot of this one is, I can kind of give the beginning broad strokes of it. There is a character of Aishwar Prasad, played by Jairem. I apologize in advance if I get any pronunciations horribly wrong, and I'm almost guaranteeing it's not an if. I absolutely will, but it is not on purpose. I'm doing my best. But he is a political figure, and the screws are being put to him because there are sacred shrines being stolen out of temples around the area, around India. And he, as a politician, is taking some heat for that. And he is very much a politician of the people. They love him. He wants to operate in their best interest. And he basically throws himself on his own sword. He says, I'm going to get this solved. I'm going to get it figured out. And if I don't, then I'm stepping down. Now, the other folks within the government aren't a huge fan of him being a man of the people, working for their best interests and against corruption and so forth, puts him in a bit of a political crosshairs. And they come up with the idea of making him the scapegoat, making him the person that is stealing these artifacts, and either that or orchestrating the theft of them. And in order to prove this, and even they would say, quote unquote, prove this, they bring somebody out of jail. that was close to him and has since been convicted of committing crimes and so forth. And they bring her out of jail. And this is the character of Shanshala, played by Anushka Shetty, and who is our main character. Shanshala is the principal character throughout Bhaagamathie. And they bring her out because she is a figure from his past, and they want to put the screws to her to get some sort of confession about his guilt in this matter. Okay, I'm kind of on board. Seems a little flimsy, a little weird, but here we go. And the only place that they can think to accomplish this, because this is a fairly high-profile convict, and they need to do this kind of on the hush-hush, the best way to interrogate her is by putting her in an abandoned, haunted mansion for several days so that she is isolated and put on guard with guards outside and cameras all over the place in there. And they can periodically pop in once a day to do the interrogation and try to break her down for the confession of this politician's guilt so that he can go away. All right, and I will say that doesn't even begin to scratch the surface of where this movie winds up. The plot was very interesting and very fascinating, and I gave it a 15 out of 25. The thing that I will say about it is the thing that I said earlier, and I will say repeatedly, it was a bit much. There's a lot of horror movies, honestly, that work in concept, but they never really flesh out a full plot that would last for, an hour and a half long feature-length movie. And this one is a unique opportunity for me to say that there was just way too much plot going on in this movie. Just so much, and it was so dense, and towards the end of it, you were just reeling, and it was almost like watching a 4th of July fireworks show, which, if you're watching this from any other part of the world, in America, we have fireworks shows on the 4th of July, celebrate our independence, and it always starts out with, some fireworks going off, and then we have, at the end, what we call the grand finale, where it's just this barrage of fireworks, this is blah, and that's how you know the show is over, is when that hits, and then everything goes quiet. And that's what this movie absolutely was. It was just this barrage of plot, storyline, character twist, and then the end was just this massive grand finale of all of that, and then it was just a bit much. So 15 out of 25 for the plot. The intent of this one, I think they were trying to make a really, really scary movie that was also character-driven and interesting, and I think that on some degree they succeeded. There were some decent kind of creepy moments, some setup to some scares. I think that the attempt that they made at jump scares was kind of done a disservice by their editing techniques. There was a whole lot of quick cuts and the jump scare sounds to go with it, except the sounds were very orchestral, and I don't think really worked in the service of the jump scares themselves. It just seemed like not the most nuanced handling of something that requires some very delicate handling. But overall, it did have some good creepy moments. It was entertaining, and the characters were worth watching at the very least. I thought that they were captivating enough that I was interested in where they were going with things, and I gave it a 14 out of 25. The acting, the principal cast, I thought did a very remarkable job. Anushka Shetty did a very great job there. Jairam did an amazing job as Ashwar Prasad, the man of the people, and the performance that they brought to the screen throughout the entire arcs of their character storylines was well played. And there were definitely some difficult moments, I would imagine, for Anushka Shetty specifically, and she pulled them off fairly well. The points that I'm taking off for acting are mostly for the other portions of the cast, and this is a difficult one for me because I need to judge things fairly, but I also am striving in any video I do, but especially in the videos of movies from foreign lands, I'm striving to be culturally sensitive, and I don't want to ever be culturally insensitive. However, I can only come at things from a Western point of view. That's where I was born. That's where I was raised. That's my experience, and that is my point of view. So, without trying to sound culturally insensitive, I will say that there was an element of acting within this that took me off guard, and I've been struggling on whether or not to take points off for it, and ultimately I did, but just not as many as I would as if this was a Western American movie. But what I'm talking about is this level of overacting that was to the point of silliness. And it really, really seemed out of place for me. And it took me out of the movie, as my experience with the movie was hindered by this element. But there were background characters and secondary characters that were just hamming it up. And, in one scene, you would have some very serious stuff going on. And then you would have the guards come in, and they're shaking their flashlights, and they're, ghost! It was very distracting. And I took some points off of that, and not, like I said, as many as if it were a Western American movie, just because I recognize that may be a cultural element of this, but as a Western movie watcher, it was distracting. So 19 out of 25 points for the acting. Overall, very good, very serviceable, and I enjoyed it. The technical, I gave a 16 out of 25. And there were some special effects in this that worked really well. There were some that not so much. The set itself was very impressive. The mansion itself, at the end credits, you saw the behind the scenes footage of them building this massive, massive set. It was a behemoth of dark corners and empty space and massive columns. It was like it was just very impressive. The camera work was very good. The special effects, as far as the camera work goes, was just a bit much. It was a lot of quick cuts met slow motion, very exaggerated quick movements, and it was a little tough to describe, but it was almost like who put this action movie in my horror movie kind of thing. And it was very impactful, but at the same time, it made it not very scary. It whatever it brought to the table, it took something else away, and whatever it took away the elements of this that I would have enjoyed as a horror movie for everything that they brought to the table as being a dramatic or action movie, in the way that they did the quick cuts and the way that they did the slow motion, unnecessary fluid motion kind of things. So, judging it as a horror movie, as the RotD Reviews channel does, I took off a few points for that, but overall the technical I was very impressed with, 16 out of 25 points, which gives us a total score of 64 out of 100 points. So, summarization of this one. Do I recommend it? I would say yes, I do. If you don't have 2.5 hours to spare, then definitely pass it by. It is a long one. It is an investment of time and effort. I think I would actually welcome, and I'm soliciting the opinions of others at this point. Please, if you've seen this review and you are familiar with Bollywood and movies from India, please leave comments on whether or not Bhaagamathie is an accurate representation of what we see out of modern Hindi cinema these days, because ultimately that's where my recommendation would come from is if you want to broaden your horizons, and if this is a good representation of that, then this would be a good foray into Bollywood and India movies. If it's not, then obviously it wouldn't be. So I defer to you, perhaps the person that's watching this that has already seen the movie, whether or not you would recommend this to others. Me personally, just from a Westerner standpoint of dipping my toes in the water here, I would say that I enjoyed the experience. Take that for what you will. So that should about do it for Bhaagamathie. I really appreciate you joining me here today. I look forward to seeing you tomorrow. And next time you want to watch a horror movie, first make sure that it's good and rotted.